Hello, I hope you will comment and like this post to support me and give me some advice. My name is Mark. I am 36 years old. Until recently, I thought I had a pretty normal life. Not perfect, but what marriage is perfect? But stable, full of love, and based on trust. My wife Rachel, 33, and I have been married for 7 years. We didn't have children, although we talked about it when things settled down. Spoiler alert, things never settled down. I work in the oil and gas industry, and about 10 months ago, I accepted a temporary overseas assignment in the Middle East. Big money. Career boost. Short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. Rachel wasn't thrilled. She didn't want me gone for months at a time, but we talked it through. I offered to fly her out for a visit every few months. She declined. Said she had things to focus on at home, her freelance design work, her yoga studio, her space. I didn't push it. I trusted her. We texted every day. Called at least 3 times a week. Video chatted on Sundays. She always looked happy enough. A little distant sometimes, but I chalked that up to the time difference and how busy she said she was. I'm just in a creative zone lately, she'd say. Or, I've been journaling more and trying to reconnect with myself. It sounded healthy. I didn't know I was funding her spiritual awakening with someone else's hands around her waist. There were red flags, of course. Hindsight is a brutal thing. Small shifts I ignored. She stopped asking about my work. She suddenly had new friends I'd never heard of before, mostly from a new co-working space. She stopped wearing her wedding ring because of yoga. Her tone turned passive-aggressive anytime I mentioned coming home early for a surprise visit. She always had some reason why that wouldn't be ideal. And then there were the finances. Rachel managed our accounts while I was away. I sent her money every month, more than enough to cover bills and her needs. But I noticed she stopped sharing the spreadsheets. Before I left, we reviewed our budget together. We had savings. We were planning to buy a house next year. I didn't realize at the time that she was planning a very different future. Without me. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I just wanted to give you all a bit of context. The unraveling starts in the next part with a single, heartless text message that hit me harder than any explosion I've ever worked near. It happened on a Thursday morning. Mark had just finished a long night shift on site. Dust in his lungs, sweat drying under his collar, he stepped outside to catch the desert sunrise, that golden red blur rising over scaffolding and steel. It was one of those moments where the world slows down and everything feels, for a second, peaceful. Then his phone vibrated. One notification. From Rachel. Not a good morning. Not a miss you. Not even a photo of Marley, the golden retriever they'd raised together. Just a short message. Cold. Final. Precise. She had filed for divorce. And the accounts were empty. At first, he didn't believe it. He reread the message. Then again. Then a 4th time. He stared at the screen like it might change. Maybe it was a joke, a mistake, a hack. His hands began to shake as he opened the banking app. Zeros. Everywhere. The checking account. The joint savings. Even the emergency fund they'd built over the years, where he'd stashed bonuses and hazard pay. Gone. Cleared out. She hadn't just ended the marriage. She'd detonated it. Mark sat in silence in the back of the pickup, the engine humming like white noise in his ears. A crew member called out to him from across the lot, asking if he was heading to breakfast. He couldn't answer. He couldn't even breathe properly. The logistics came next. He called the bank. Confirmed the transfers were real. Called a friend back home, one of the few people he still trusted, and asked him to drive by the house. Except there was no house. It had been sold. Everything was gone. Furniture, wall art, that ridiculous espresso machine Rachel had insisted on importing from Italy. All of it wiped clean, like he'd never existed. The only thing left was the echo of their life and the realization that while he was sacrificing in another country, she was erasing him in his own. Later that night, he tried calling her. No answer. Not even voicemail. Just a mechanical voice saying the number was no longer in service. A digital wall between them, as if she'd died and left a ghost in her place. But Rachel wasn't dead. She was just done pretending. And Mark, still thousands of miles away, had no idea what she'd done with their life or who she'd done it with. The betrayal hadn't even fully arrived yet. But the silence screamed enough. Mark booked the next flight home. 30 hours of travel. Little food. No sleep. Just time, too much of it, to replay every conversation, every smile, every silent moment that now sounded different in hindsight. The flight felt less like returning and more like being dragged backward into a reality he no longer recognized. When he landed, the world was quiet. Unfamiliar. Even the air back home felt wrong. His friend picked him up from the airport and drove him to Rachel's sister's house, the last address Mark could think of. Maybe Rachel had gone there. Maybe she'd feel some ounce of shame if she had to face family. She was there. When Rachel stepped onto the porch, she looked anew. Not like herself. She'd cut her hair short. Wore trendy sunglasses, bright lipstick, and a flowing outfit that didn't scream freelance designer anymore, it screamed someone who already moved on. Mark stood still. Her eyes flicked across his face, indifferent. She said his name like it was an obligation. She wasn't surprised to see him. Not even angry. Just irritated. He asked her why. She shrugged. It wasn't working. She felt stuck. He had been away too long. Things change. People change. She told him it wasn't cheating if they were emotionally done. That's what she said. Not an apology. Not a moment of regret. Just that it didn't count because she had already checked out. Mark asked about the money. About the house. The savings. Their future. Rachel smiled, actually smiled, and told him she deserved it. All those years she supported his career, held things down while he was gone, made sacrifices. She had simply taken what was owed. He asked if there was someone else. She didn't answer at first. But she didn't deny it either. Instead, she said that for once, she wanted to be the one who got more. Not the wife who waited. Not the woman behind the man. She called it taking control. Mark called it betrayal. The conversation ended with her saying he could go ahead and be angry, if that helps. Then she turned and walked back inside, like he was a delivery that had been sent to the wrong address. There was no closure. Just the loudest silence of his life. I landed just after 6 a.m., didn't sleep on the plane. Couldn't. My body was in one country, but my brain was still stuck in that moment, seeing the words on the screen like a death sentence. No emotion. No warning. Just a text that shattered my entire life. I filed for divorce. The account's empty. Don't come back. But I came back anyway. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe some kind of misunderstanding. A meltdown she'd regret. A stupid overreaction. I held on to hope like a fool gripping the last rung of a burning ladder. When my friend pulled up to our driveway, I felt like I'd walked into someone else's life. The yard was mowed, the porch swept. But the front door, it had a new lock. A different welcome mat. Like the house itself had moved on without me. I rang the bell. Nothing. Then I checked my phone and remembered Rachel's sister. Jenna. Maybe she knew something. Maybe she'd seen the version of Rachel that had fallen so far off the rails. So I went there. When Rachel opened the door, it took me a second to even recognize her. Her hair was shorter. Straightened. She wore something designer-looking, soft beige, silky, not the usual boho stuff she used to live in. A new phone in her hand. New sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked refreshed. like divorce had exfoliated her soul. Me? I was standing there in airport jeans with 36 hours of grime on me and heartbreak stitched into every inch of my face. She didn't hug me. Didn't ask how my flight was. She stepped outside like I was someone selling cable. When I asked her why, she didn't even blink. She gave me this detached, clinical breakdown of how we weren't working, and how she had outgrown the life we built. She told me she felt like my absence forced her to finally wake up. No remorse. No tears. Just bullet points. When I asked about the money, our money, she tilted her head like I was being unreasonable. Told me she deserved it. That it was compensation for the years she spent supporting my journey. She said it with this air of entitlement, like she'd just been handed a bonus at work. Then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Was there someone else? She looked at me like it didn't matter. Like even that was old news. She didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it either. Just gave me this smug little smile that said, "You're not the victim here, Mark. You're just the past." And then she turned and walked back inside her sister's house. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask if I had somewhere to sleep. She didn't even ask about Marley, our dog, who was staying with my friend. I stood there on the porch for a while. Long enough to realize that the woman I married was gone. Maybe she'd been gone long before I ever left the country. I ended up sleeping in my friend's spare room that night, well, lying down at least. Sleep didn't come. Not really. I stared at the ceiling in the dark while Marley snored softly at my feet, unaware that his world had just burned down. Everything felt surreal. My body was back in the same city, same streets I knew for years, but nothing was familiar. I wasn't going home. I didn't have a home. The keys in my pocket didn't open the front door anymore. My wife wasn't my wife. My future had been spent behind my back. I'd spent the last 10 months working 12-hour days in a brutal climate to build something for us. I missed birthdays, our anniversary, even skipped coming home for my dad's minor surgery just to rack up another month of pay. And she spent that time unraveling everything we built, smiling on video calls while liquidating our life behind the screen. I tried to eat the next morning. Couldn't. My friend asked what I wanted to do next. I didn't know. Every thought ended in static. I had no plan, no savings, no answers. Just a growing list of questions that I'd never get honest answers to. Like how long had she been planning it? Did she meet him before I left? Was any of it real? I looked back on the months leading up to my departure. There were moments, quick ones, where she seemed disconnected. Not sad, not angry. Just elsewhere. I mistook it for stress. Now I see it was detachment. She was rehearsing her exit before I even boarded the plane. And the most gutting part? She didn't end things face to face. She didn't call. She didn't wait for me to come home. She sent a text. Not even a full paragraph. Just a few cold, calculated sentences that instantly wiped out a decade of memories, love, and trust. I kept checking my phone, expecting something. An apology. Regret. Even cruelty would have been better than silence. But there was nothing. No attempt to explain. No, I'm sorry for the way I did it. No, I hope you're okay. Just nothing. That kind of silence does something to a person. It makes you question your worth. Makes you wonder if you were ever really seen. Or if you were just a placeholder in someone else's story. I wanted to scream. Break something. Burn photos. But all I could do was stare at them, those stupid wedding pictures in my camera roll, and wonder who the hell I'd been kissing that day. Because it sure as hell wasn't the woman I met on that porch. Grief is quiet. But anger? Anger kicks the door down. The day after I saw Rachel, something in me cracked. That numbness I'd been carrying, the shock, the confusion, the helplessness, burned away. And what replaced it wasn't sadness. It was rage. Not screaming, crying, throwing things around rage. No, this was cold. Controlled. Focused. I spent the morning retracing our accounts, even though I knew what I'd find. The final transfers were slick. She hadn't just taken the money, she'd closed the accounts completely and reopened new ones under her name alone. Everything had been planned. Timed. Like a bank heist with vows. She must have waited for the moment she knew I couldn't get back fast enough. Filed the divorce. Sold the house. Liquidated our joint life. And then just deleted me from her narrative. The worst part? She didn't even change her phone number because she was afraid of me. She did it because she didn't need me anymore. I started calling lawyers. I didn't care how much it cost. I wanted answers. I wanted consequences. I wanted someone to look at what she did and say, yes, this was wrong. But divorce courts don't care about betrayal. They care about paperwork. Turns out, unless you can prove fraud, she's allowed to take the money from joint accounts. She's allowed to file while you're abroad. She's allowed to sell the house if your name isn't on the deed. You know what she isn't allowed to do? Feel bad, apparently. That afternoon, I did something I told myself I wouldn't do. I checked her Instagram. New profile. New handle. Same face. Sunset photos. Yoga on a beach. Her arms around someone who looked like he came straight from an overpriced retreat in Bali. Comments filled with heart emojis and fake deep quotes like, sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. She hadn't lost anything. I had. She was out there finding herself while I was picking up pieces I didn't even drop. That night, I sat alone in my car for 2 hours, engine off, just watching the street outside her new apartment. I never went inside. Never knocked. I didn't want her back. I just wanted to understand what I did to deserve this. But there's no satisfying answer to that kind of question. Because people like Rachel? They don't blow up their marriages because of what you did. They do it because of what they think they're owed. And she thought she was owed everything, even if she had to burn me to get it. I always thought forgiveness was something that just happened. Like grief. Like healing. That it would arrive quietly one day, when the dust had settled and the pain had faded. But in the weeks after Rachel blew up our life, I came to understand something I never wanted to believe. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. Not because they made a mistake. Not because they cheated. Not even because they left. But because of how they did it. Because they knew exactly how deep the knife would go, and they twisted anyway. One afternoon, Jenna, Rachel's sister, called me. She hadn't heard from Rachel in a while and asked if I had any idea where she was. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Rachel was ghosting her own family now. I told Jenna the truth. All of it. How I came home to a new lock, an empty bank account, and a wife who treated me like a business transaction she was finally cashing out on. Jenna didn't defend her. She just sighed and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mark. She's not the person we thought she was." That evening, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Rachel. A short text. A single line. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. She sent another the next morning. This time longer, something about things happening too fast, not being proud of how she handled it, and wanting closure. Closure. The word made me laugh. Because the moment she sent that cold divorce text from hundreds of miles away, she closed the door herself. She didn't want conversation. She wanted control. And now that the dust was settling and the image in the mirror wasn't as perfect as she thought, she was back. Not for love. Not for regret. But for her narrative. She wanted me to absorb the damage quietly so she could feel better about what she'd done. But I wasn't going to. I didn't reply to her message. I didn't owe her the dignity of a response. I already gave her years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of love she treated like background noise. Forgiveness isn't something you give just because someone finally feels uncomfortable with silence. It's earned. And Rachel? She never even asked for it. That was the moment I stopped trying to fix anything. Stopped trying to understand her. Stopped trying to mourn what was. She wanted a clean break. I was finally ready to give it to her. Starting over sounds empowering on paper. In reality, it's a mess of forms, frozen meals, empty rooms, and trying not to lose your mind every time you pass a couple holding hands in the grocery store. After I stopped responding to Rachel's messages, the silence became my new normal. It was awful at first. You get used to someone being in your life, her texts, her voice, her scent on the pillow. Then one day it all disappears, and what's left isn't peace. It's static. White noise where love used to be. But there was something else too, space. For the first time in a long time, my life was mine. I got a small apartment near the outskirts of town, nothing fancy. Marley adjusted quickly. I, on the other hand, stood in an empty living room for an hour the first night, wondering how to even exist outside of her orbit. I had to relearn everything. How to cook for one. How to sleep without a voice beside me. How to stop checking my phone like a trained dog waiting for a command. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, boring, and painful. But it was mine. I took a job locally, smaller paycheck, but it kept me home. I started running again, not for fitness, but to feel like my heart still worked. I went to therapy once a week, even when I didn't feel like I had anything to say. Most of the time, I just sat there, breathing through the silence that Rachel used to fill. I still hadn't told many people the full story. When friends asked what happened, I said she wanted different things. I didn't want to explain the text message, the stolen money, the man she left me for, who, by the way, she had apparently broken up with 2 weeks after I came home. It would have felt like trying to convince people not to pity me. But sometimes, late at night, I would wonder where she was. Was she happy? Was she still chasing whatever freedom she thought she was missing? I'd tell myself I didn't care. But sometimes the lies we tell ourselves are just softer versions of the truth. The reality was this: she left me like I was disposable. And I survived it. I wasn't whole. I wasn't healed. But I was still here. And there was something powerful in simply refusing to disappear. They don't tell you that healing comes with guilt. You expect pain. You expect anger. But no one warns you about the guilt you feel when you start to move on, when you realize a day passed and you didn't think about her. When you laugh at something stupid and then feel like you've betrayed the version of yourself that fell apart on a motel floor. Rachel became a ghost in my life. Not the haunting kind, more like background static. She showed up in the smallest places. I'd reach for her brand of coffee in the store without thinking. Hear a song she used to play in the kitchen and have to pause, mid-step, to let the ache move through me. But those moments started to shrink. There was a time when everything reminded me of her. But now? She'd become something else. A memory. A lesson. Not a presence. I ran into someone who knew us both, a mutual friend from way back. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He didn't even know we'd split. When I told him, his eyes widened, and he said, "She always seemed so put together." I laughed at that. She was. Right until she wasn't. He asked if I still talked to her. I said no. He nodded, like he understood, but I could see the questions forming. Everyone always wants the clean version of divorce. They want to know who cheated, who lied, who left first. They want a villain. Rachel was mine. But not in the way that makes for a good gossip story. No big blow-up. No screaming match. Just a text, a vanishing act, and a woman who walked away like she just shut down a startup that didn't scale. But I didn't tell him all that. I just said, she left. I stayed. That's all that matters. That night, I cooked a real dinner for the first time in months. Just for me. Nothing special: steak, roasted potatoes, a bottle of cheap wine. I lit a candle, because why not? I sat down, looked across the empty table, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't picture her sitting there. I didn't picture anyone. And that felt like progress. It happened on a random Tuesday. I was walking Marley through the park, same route we always took, and I saw her. Rachel. She was sitting on a bench near the pond, headphones in, staring down at her phone like the world didn't exist. She didn't see me. And I didn't call out to her. I just stood there, hidden by a row of trees, heart pounding like I was the one caught doing something wrong. She looked the same. Still dressed like she was on the cover of some wellness blog. Still put together. Still distant from the world around her. It was like watching a movie I used to love but couldn't remember why. A part of me waited for her to notice me. Another part prayed she wouldn't. I stood there long enough to feel ridiculous. Then I walked away. She never looked up. That night, I thought about what I would have said if I'd confronted her. Something powerful, probably. Calm. Sharp. Maybe a line she'd replay for years, one final truth to haunt her. But the truth is, I didn't need to say anything. She made her choices. And I survived them. That's something I didn't think I'd be able to say back when it all blew up. Back when I was sleeping on my friend's couch and checking her Instagram at 2 a.m., wondering how the hell my life had ended without me even getting a say. But now I had a life again. Smaller. Simpler. But mine. I'd gotten a new job, nothing glamorous, but stable. I'd started seeing a therapist who didn't give me advice, just asked the right questions until I found the answers myself. I'd even gone on a few dates. Nothing serious. Just proof that I could sit across from someone new and talk about things that didn't involve betrayal or bank statements. And Marley? He was still snoring at my feet every night like nothing had changed. Sometimes I envied that about dogs. No complicated emotions. Just presence. Loyalty. Peace. I realized that day in the park that closure wasn't something she could give me. It wasn't something that came from a text, or an apology, or some carefully worded explanation over coffee. It came from knowing that she no longer controlled my narrative. She wasn't a chapter anymore. She was a footnote. It's been almost a year now. A full rotation of seasons since the day my life imploded in the form of a text message. Sometimes I still wake up half expecting to find it was all a dream, that I'll check my phone and see Rachel's name light up with something mundane like, "Can you grab oat milk?" But then I roll over, look around my one-bedroom apartment, small, quiet, clean, and remember the truth. She's gone. And thank God for that. People think the hardest part of betrayal is the moment it happens. But it's not. It's the weeks after. The dull ache of routine without them. The realization that they were already gone long before they left. Rachel didn't just cheat. She replaced me without ceremony. She built a new life from the bones of our old one and had the nerve to call it healing. But what she never realized, and maybe still doesn't, is that you can't truly start over if you lie your way out the door. Me? I started over the hard way. Through therapy. Through days where brushing my teeth felt like a win. Through nights I stared at the ceiling wondering what made me so easy to leave. And now I don't wonder anymore. I wasn't the problem. She was. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a stage, and when I stopped clapping, she found someone else who would. Until he got bored. Then someone else after that. I hear things. She's still searching. Still finding herself. And I hope she does. But me? I found something better. I found peace. Not the loud, triumphant kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from cooking for one and not feeling lonely. From waking up without dread. From petting my dog and not having to apologize for existing. I don't hate her. I don't love her either. She's just someone I used to know. And if you're reading this, someone freshly betrayed, someone wondering how to keep breathing, let me say this. You don't need their apology. You don't need revenge. You just need to keep walking forward, one brutally honest step at a time. Because one day, you'll look around and realize the person you thought you lost in the divorce wasn't them. It was you. And you just got him back.